My son left me to die in intensive care. 7 days later, I rewrote my will so that his name would appear next to the line about $10 million. When he found out about this and came to me, he begged on his knees to be included in the will. I put the unsigned codicil between my teeth and chewed it until it turned to mush. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. The heart monitor ticked away like a metronome that didn't care whether I kept up with it. A curtain separated me from a stranger gasping for air behind an oxygen mask. The nurse went to get the cardiologist. They said they need someone from your family to sign a consent form if you have another attack, I told him. He looked at the monitor, then at the door, as if looking for a more suitable place for this conversation. Dad, the hospital has protocols. I'm not a doctor, he said, checking a message I couldn't see. I have a meeting with Carter at 4. He flew in from Dallas. It's important. Important, I repeated. Don't talk like that, he said. You know how I feel about melodrama. They'd found me on the floor of my garage that morning, half crumpled between the workbench and the motorcycle that hadn't run since 1999. I'd felt the chest pain like a hand squeezing a wet sponge. I'd crawled to the phone, knocked it off the hook, and managed to press 911 with a knuckle before the world narrowed. Paramedics. A siren. Then cold gel and wires. Your mother would have sat with me, I said. He sighed through his nose. We've been over this. You weaponize Mom's memory when you want me to feel guilty. A nurse leaned in. Mr. Holloway, your son is listed as emergency contact. Can you stay close for the next hour? We may need consent for a line, possibly a temporary pacing wire if he... I'm stepping into a meeting, he said. Smile locked on, the one he used with clients. But you can call me. I'll have my assistant. Sir? She tried again, gentle but firm. We might need a decision in minutes. Daniel looked at me and something passed between us, something old and complicated. Then he adjusted his cuff, nodded at the nurse as if to bless the process, and said, Do what you need to do, without signing a thing, without leaving a number that would reach him, without asking what any of those words meant. When the door closed behind him, the room grew larger and less inhabited at the same time. The monitor went on beating. A new nurse came, and a resident with tired eyes explained how a temporary wire might keep my heart from wandering off again. I imagined a thin line holding me like a kite in a wind I couldn't see. Do it, I said. I'm not waiting for anyone. They did it. I watched my heart's rhythm steady into something like a truce. By evening, a card appeared on the tray table, white with the hospital's crest and a stamped phone number for family liaison. No one had called it on my behalf. When visiting hours ended, the lights dimmed and the ICU settled into the strange, constant movement of machines and feet and murmured instructions. The curtain next to me whispered as the stranger stirred. I stared at the clock until its hands lost all meaning. When the night nurse checked the line in my neck, her eyes were kind and clinical. Anyone coming in for you tomorrow? She asked. I'll be here, I said. She understood. I didn't sleep so much as go blank and wake again. In the early morning, the cardiologist with capable hands told me the worst had passed. A temporary wire had done its work. We'll pull it later today if your rhythm keeps behaving, he said. If you're lucky, Mr. Holloway, this was a frightening warning, not a goodbye. Luck's better than most investments, I said. He smiled. Not a bad creed. I called Daniel, straight to voicemail. I left a message that sounded like a voice from the bottom of a well. They pulled me back, I said. Come when you can. He texted a photo an hour later, a steak, a glass of red, a caption. Dinner with Carter went great. Big things coming. Rest up. I stared at my chest where tape held old man skin in place. Big things coming, I said to the ceiling. On day 3, they moved me out of ICU into telemetry. On day 4, they unearthed me from cords. On day 5, a physical therapist taught me to walk the hallway without looking like a man who'd forgotten how. On day 6, my friend Sam from the old engineering firm showed up with a thermos of soup and stories about projects that had defied budgets and gravity. He told a joke about an architect who insisted a beam could hover if we believed in it. We both laughed the laugh of men who had held up more than beams out of stubbornness and pride. On day 7, the nurse brought me the discharge instructions and a cheap bag for my few belongings. "You'll need to follow up with Dr. Ernst in 2 weeks," she said. "No heavy lifting. No motorcycle." "I hear that a lot," I said. "I doubt you listen," she replied, but she smiled when she said it. Before I left, I asked for a pen. I wrote down the names of the nurses who had sat with me, the one who'd tightened the wire at 4 in the morning, the one who'd noticed my shiver and brought an extra blanket, the one with the warm, steady hands who'd said, "I've got you," when an alarm that wasn't mine went berserk and the whole room tensed like a pulled muscle. At home, the air smelled like sawdust and lemon cleaner, the way it had for years. Margaret's scarf still hung on the hook by the door. I reached for it the way an old horse reaches for hay, out of habit and comfort. I stood with it in my hand until the tightness in my chest had nothing to do with arteries. The phone rang. My lawyer's name, Anita Patel, lit the screen. "Anita," I said, "I'm alive." "I heard," she said, relief softening the professional clip of her voice. "Sam called me." "How are you?" "Borrowed time," I said. "I intend to spend it properly. You sound like a man who's been thinking." "I want to change everything," I said. "I want to change it all while my hands still work." "Your estate plan?" she asked. "And the power of attorney I gave Daniel after Margaret died. Revoke it." Today she didn't ask why. She'd been in my kitchen when Daniel had spoken over me like a consultant hired to fix a recalcitrant machine. She'd watched me sign papers at his insistence, thinking paperwork could be a bridge. Bridges don't hold if the other side is eroding. "I'll come by this afternoon," she said. "We'll do the revocation properly and draft whatever you want." "Bring a clean pad," I said. "I've got ideas." She arrived with a briefcase and eyes that missed little. We sat at the oak table I'd sanded myself 20 years ago. She slid documents across the wood, and I signed in black ink with a hand that didn't shake. The power of attorney that once allowed Daniel to speak for me went quiet with a notary stamp and Anita's tidy initialing. "Now," I said, "we write a new will." She waited. "I want it loud," I said. "I want it clear. I want it kind where kindness is owed, and sharp where sharpness has been earned." "Tell me, Robert," she said, pen poised. "Who gets what?" I looked at Margaret's scarf on the hook and pictured her hands folding laundry, stirring soup, holding our son's cheeks as he fell asleep on her shoulder. "I built a company from scratch," I said. "Sold it 5 years ago. Put most into safe places. The house is paid for. There's a portfolio that would make a banker nod. I've talked about fair my whole life because engineers love that word. We tell ourselves the load distributes evenly. If the math is right," I pressed my palm flat on the table. "But this isn't about math. It's about trust." She waited again. One of the things I liked about Anita was her patience with old men who used metaphors to get to the point. "Daniel gets $10 million, I said. Her expression didn't change, but I saw the flicker of calculation. Probate implications, taxes, beneficiary designations. "In what form?" she asked. "In the form of a promise," I said. "A binding pledge in his name to the hospital that kept me alive when he left me. A $10 million endowment to fund beds in the unit where men like me count ceiling tiles and wait for someone they love to show up." I could feel the heat rise in my chest, a different kind of pressure. "The endowment will be named the Daniel Holloway Fund for Unattended Patients. It will pay for additional night shift nurses, family liaisons who don't go to voicemail, Phone chargers for people whose batteries are dying in the worst hours of their lives. The plaque will say, "Established in gratitude," and everyone will think my son is magnanimous. They will thank him at galas. They will put his name on brochures. And he will never see $1. Anita sat very still. Then she said, "That's precise." "It's just," I said, "I'm not punishing him with poverty. I'm letting him carry what he chose, the story of his absence, in a way that does some good in the world." "And the rest of your estate?" "My granddaughter Ellie, if life breaks that way. She's 12. She turpentines paintbrushes without being told, and says please to store clerks. Her college is covered in a trust that matures on her 21st birthday if she has not been made to carry the weight of her parents' choices. If she has, the trust matures sooner. Anita, make it so that no one can yank her into court to steal it from her." "We can do that," she said. "My house goes into a life estate for me, then to the trust. My tools go to Sam. He'll use them. He'll talk to them like I do. Margaret's jewelry, the pieces with real stories, go to Ellie. The cheap stuff goes to anyone who wants a memory. And the business interests? The minority stake in the firm goes to the employees' fund. They built the thing I built," she wrote without looking up. "And Daniel beyond the endowment in his name?" I thought about the boy who had curled into me when a thunderstorm cracked the sky, the teenager who'd closed his bedroom door, the college man who'd come home with new opinions and no time for old ones, the adult who had treated me like a rusted hinge in need of oil or removal. "He gets one thing," I said. "A monogrammed leather portfolio I gave him when he landed his first real job. It's in my closet, top shelf, back left. The one he forgot on your kitchen counter the day he moved into his first apartment," Anita said, remembering. She remembered everything. "That one," I said. We drafted, revised, printed. The notary came, neighbor from 2 houses down, a quiet woman with a neat bun. We signed. The will nested in a blue folder like a finished bridge with no cracks. "And the 10 million messaging," Anita said when we were done. "You want the hospital to publicize the pledge?" "Not yet," I said. "First, I want Daniel to hear 10 million without the rest of the sentence. I want him to sprint Robert," she said carefully. "If you're baiting him, bait him ethically." "Of course," I said. "No lies. Just selective truth." She watched me for a moment, then nodded. "We can file a notice with the probate registry that a new will exists and a scheduled codicil regarding specific devices to close family relatives in the amount of $10 million. Those notices are public records. If someone's watching, they'll see the phrase. They won't see the rest. Someone is always watching when there's money," I said. Anita stood. "I'll make the filings in the morning." "And Robert, eat something with actual calories. I don't want another phone call from the hospital." After she left, I sat with the blue folder and the scarf and the quiet. I made a sandwich and couldn't taste it. Late, I walked the hallway and ran my fingers along the family photographs Margaret insisted we display. Daniel in a Little League uniform with a cap too big for his head. Daniel at high school graduation, eyes somewhere in a distance we couldn't follow. Daniel at his wedding, his jaw tight, his smile different than mine. Ellie at 6, missing her front teeth, her hand in mine as if the world made sense that way. On the 3rd morning after the filing, my phone buzzed at 6:12 a.m., like a wasp. "Dad!" Daniel's voice was bright with something that isn't love. "Can I swing by?" "Coffee? I'm headed that way." "I'm here," I said. He arrived with the coffee he knows I like but seldom buys me. 2 creams, no sugar, and a smile that belonged to the man in the cufflinks, not to the boy with the cowlick. "How are you feeling?" he asked. The way clients ask how your weekend was while looking over your shoulder for the person who signs checks. "Alive," I said. He walked the room as if he were appraising it. I ran into someone from county this morning. She mentioned seeing a filing. He managed to make the word casual and urgent at once. Something about your will. Did she? I said. She said. He stopped, recalibrated. She said the words 10 million and close family were in the notice. I let the silence sit. He filled it. Dad, look, I've been thinking about that day at the hospital, he said quickly, the words tripping over each other as if they'd been waiting somewhere behind his teeth. I handled that badly. I thought they had it under control and Carter was flying in and... He swallowed. I should have stayed. I should have. I'm sorry I watched him forget to breathe and then remember. For a moment I saw the boy who had admitted stealing cookies only after crumbs betrayed him. I appreciate the apology, I said. He exhaled. I also wanted to talk about the future. It's been a hard few years, Dad. You know that. The markets, the firm, the way clients pivot. I'm recalibrating. But I have a plan. Carter's ready to invest in a new vehicle, and if I just had some runway, I said softly. He set the coffee on the table and sat. His knee bounced once, twice, then stilled by force. I want to be honest, he said. I made mistakes. But I'm learning. I can build something that makes you proud. I can't do it with my hands tied. Are your hands tied? I asked. Or are you looking for the easier rope? He flinched, then smoothed his tie like that could press the hurt flat. Dad, I'm asking for a chance. You had one, I said, and it came out too quiet to be cruel. In a room where I didn't know if I'd have another hour. You had a chance to stand beside me and hold the line. It was a meeting, he said, but the defense sounded brittle in the air between us. Everything is a meeting, I said, until it's the last one. He glanced toward the blue folder sitting on the counter as if it made a sound only he could hear. I saw the notice, he said. I hope you've considered adding me. Properly. 10 million. It would allow me to fulfill what you and Mom hoped. Your mother hoped you'd be kind, I said. Everything else was negotiable. We held the silence. Then he did the thing I didn't think he had left in him. He slid off his chair onto his knees. He didn't look graceful. He looked like a man whose spine had lost its word. Please, he said. Please, Dad. Put me in the will. I'm asking you man to man. I looked at him kneeling on my kitchen floor, the same floor he'd helped me tile the summer he was 14, dropping a square and cracking it, learning that nothing irreversible can't be covered if you plan correctly. The memory struck me with the fairness of a hammer. Stand up, I said. He stayed where he was. Stand up, I repeated. Face me like the man you want me to believe you are. He stood. His eyes shone. I opened the blue folder. Not the will. Never the will. The will was signed and scanned and stored with Anita and her fireproof safes. No. I lifted a single sheet. A draft codicil Anita had typed at my request. It was clean, accurate, and deliberately unsigned. At the top, in bold, it said, Amendment. Specific bequest to son. $10 million. Daniel's breath hitched at the number. Hope flew to his face like birds to bread. I held the codicil by its edges and looked him in the eye. You left me, I said. The nurses did not. The doctors did not. The janitor who mopped under my feet so my shoes wouldn't stick when I tried to walk did not. You did. This, I raised the page, is the piece of paper that would fix your panic. It cannot fix what you did. Nothing can. But it would buy you air, and you think you deserve it because we share a name. Dad, he whispered. I set the edge of the page between my teeth. Don't, he said. I bit. Paper has no taste. It becomes pulp quickly. I chewed and swallowed once, twice, while he stared as if he could drag the words back out of me by pleading with my throat. "Stop," he said, hand reaching, then falling. I ate the rest of it. I let him see that I wouldn't change the world to fit his next plan. The kitchen clock ticked like a second heart. He stood very still. When he spoke, his voice had changed. "That's dramatic," he said, armor snapping back into place. "But there are other copies." "No," I said. "There isn't another signed one because I never signed it. It will never exist beyond the part of it you just watched me refuse." He smiled without humor. "I have rights, Dad." "You do," I said. "You have the right to live with the consequences of abandoning your father on a day he needed you. You have the right to start over without my assistance. You have the right to work. The world offers work to men with hands. Yours still function." "You'll regret this," he said, and it sounded like a line he'd used before. "I regret that I raised a man who needed the proof of pulp in my mouth to know I was done," I said. He picked up his jacket. "You're not thinking clearly." "I've never been clearer," I said. He left without slamming the door. That was the piece of decorum he kept when all else failed. I sat at the table until the light changed across the floor. Then I called Anita. "How did he take it?" she asked. "He thinks paper holds more power than people," I said. "He's going to test that." "We'll be ready," she said. "The will is executed properly. The trust is funded. The hospital endowment is in process with the language you specified. If he challenges, he'll find iron, not clay." "Good," I said. "I'm tired." "Rest," she said. "I'll email you the hospital's draft press release next week." "They want to confirm the wording on the plaque. Send it," I said. A week later, I stood in the hospital lobby in a jacket I hadn't worn since Margaret's memorial. The CEO shook my hand with the solemn gratitude administrators practice in front of cameras. The head nurse from ICU hugged me with real feeling. "Mr. Holloway," she said softly, "you didn't have to." "I did," I said. We unveiled a temporary sign while contractors measured a wall for the permanent plaque. It read, "The Daniel Holloway Fund for Unattended Patients, established in gratitude by Robert Holloway." Pictures were taken. A reporter asked why I'd chosen the name. "Because names are heavy," I said. "They should be attached to something worth carrying." The article ran that afternoon. Daniel didn't call. His silence had a different temperature now. Cool, calculating. The first letter from his attorney arrived 3 days later, hand-delivered by a messenger who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Notice of intent to contest testamentary dispositions," it said at the top. The body of it alleged undue influence, lack of capacity, and intentional infliction of emotional distress by way of reputational appropriation. Anita laughed out loud when she read that last phrase. "Reputational appropriation?" she said. "Your son's lawyer is trying to argue that your donation in his name does him harm because people will think he's generous." She leafed through the pages, amused and meticulous. "This is creative. It's also nonsense." We answered without heat. We enclosed copies of medical records showing I was fully oriented when we signed the will. We enclosed statements from witnesses who had known me for decades. We included a letter from the hospital thanking me for the endowment and acknowledging that I had requested the name because I wanted it, not because anyone had tricked me. Before the first preliminary hearing, Ellie asked to see me. Her mother, Daniel's ex-wife, drove her over. She stood in my doorway with a backpack too big for her frame. "You okay, Grandpa?" she asked. "I am," I said. "You?" She nodded a little too quickly. She looked past me at the photographs like they were windows in a place with weather she didn't trust. "Dad's been different," she said carefully. "He says grown-up stuff in a way that makes my stomach feel weird." "You know," I said, "when I was your age and something made my stomach feel weird, my mother would tell me to put my hand there and say the feeling out loud." She put her palm to her shirt, just below the collarbone. I feel like something's sliding, she said. Like when the car hits black ice and Mom says, "Don't brake, steer." Then we steer, I said. She hugged me with a strength children have when they decide they are not as breakable as their adults fear. When she pulled back, she looked at the wall and frowned. "Why is Dad's name on the hospital sign?" "Because I wanted it there," I said. "Because I wanted that name to do some work." She made a face that said she was 12 and already knew too much about how names can be both doors and locks. "Grandpa," she said, "whatever the lawyers are doing, I'm on your side. Not because of money, because I don't like it when people say they'll show up and then don't." "You and me both," I said. At the hearing, the judge, with a sensible haircut and a voice that brooked no theater, glanced through our filings and stopped Daniel's counsel before he could wind up into a speech. "Your client alleges lack of capacity," she said, "and yet you've submitted no medical evidence to support it. He alleges undue influence. Interestingly, the alleged influencer is the testator's own conscience. And your novel tort theory, that being publicly credited with a charitable act constitutes reputational harm, is, to put it kindly, unsupported by any authority this court recognizes." "There is the matter of filial expectation," the attorney ventured. "A son expects." "A son expects what the testator decides," the judge said. "Expectations are not law." She denied the motion to enjoin the endowment. She set a schedule for the remainder of the contest and gave Daniel a long look that wasn't unkind, just final. In the hallway afterward, Sam leaned in and murmured, "That went well." "It went justly," I said. "Justice and victory are cousins who don't always attend the same functions." That night, Daniel came to my house again. He didn't knock. He pushed the door open with the familiarity of a man who still believes certain thresholds were his by birthright. "No theatrics," he said, as if he were the one allowed to set terms in my kitchen. "No paper eating." "Let's talk." "We are talking," I said. "You embarrassed me," he said, "with that fund." "You could have used your own name." "I did," I said. "Read the plaque again." He waved a hand. "You knew what you were doing. You wanted to tie me to your narrative. You wanted to punish me. I wanted to make something good out of a day that could have ended with a call to the morgue," I said. "If you feel punished by that, you chose the rope." He gripped the back of a chair until his knuckles whitened. "I needed that money. I needed a son who would sit with me and argue about the Mets while monitors beeped," I said. "We don't always get what we need." He took a breath, a long one. "What do I have to do?" he said finally, and it was as close to humility as I had seen in years. "Tell me what to do to get back in your will." "Live like a man who deserves it," I said. "For 10 years, no schemes, no begging. Work you can point to without coughing. Pay debts you owe. Apologize to people you have harmed without turning apologies into investments. If you still want to talk after that, call me. If I'm alive, we'll sit on this porch and watch a weather front move in, and we'll decide whether a man who can hold a line for a decade has earned anything apart from his own self-respect." 10 years, he said, the words falling like nails into a board. "You've spent 10 building a story I don't want my granddaughter to read," I said. "Build a different one." He stared at me until I thought he might hurl the chair just to have the satisfaction of breaking something I'd touched. Instead, he set his jaw and left. In the months that followed, he tried other angles. Through Anita, softened letters promising reform. Through Ellie, attempting to triangulate guilt until her mother shut that down with a fierceness that made me proud of a woman I did not raise. He tried the press, an anonymous comment on a local article suggesting I was senile and being manipulated by hostile parties. The comment disappeared under a flood of stories from strangers about nurses who had held their hands in rooms with linoleum floors. The world, it turns out, still knows how to weigh certain things. The hospital wing opened with fresh paint and quiet carpet. I walked its length with the head nurse and watched a new liaison help a woman plug her phone into a charger so she could call her brother. The liaison sat beside her while she cried, then listened to a doctor explain a procedure. That, I thought, is worth 10 million. Ellie visited on Saturdays. We made pancakes and pretended we could flip them without ruining one per batch. She told me about school and friends and a science teacher who made the periodic table sound like a magic trick. Once she said, "Dad started driving Uber at night. He says he's hustling." She didn't say whether she believed him. I didn't dwell on him. A man can spend the hours he has left counting the ways he was injured or measuring the usefulness of what he can still build. I chose the latter most days. On the days I chose the former, I let it pass like weather. A year later, on the anniversary of the ICU curtain that whispered while I counted ceiling tiles, I sat in the hospital lobby again. The permanent plaque had been mounted. The letters were clean and deep. A woman in scrubs stopped beside me, reading. "That's your son?" she asked, pointing. "That's his name," I said. "This one is mine." I tapped the line beneath. "He's lucky," she said, not knowing anything. "I am," I said. I thought of the page I'd chewed and the boy who had knelt and the man I had raised who could still, if he chose, build something worth siding with. I thought of Daniel's hands, which had built towers of contracts and dinners with investors, but could also, if he wanted, lift a hammer and fix a thing that groaned. Back home, on a quiet evening, I opened a drawer and found the old leather portfolio, the one with his initials. I turned it in my hands, felt the stiffness in the corners where the leather had never learned to bend. I set it on the porch. When Ellie came the next morning, I handed it to her. "Give it to your father," I said. "Tell him I kept it for him. Tell him leather softens with use." She looked at me for the kind of long moment only a grandchild can give without making it awkward. "Do you think he'll change?" she asked. "I think people do what they practice," I said. "If he practices changing, yes." "And you?" she asked. "Will you change about the will?" I smiled, not because the question was funny, but because it landed exactly where it should, on the hinge between justice and mercy. "I wrote what I can live with," I said. "The rest is up to the days I have left, and what he does with his." She tucked the portfolio under her arm like a schoolbook. On her way down the steps, she paused, turned back. "Grandpa?" she said. "Yes?" "I like the plaque," she said. "It tells the truth without telling the whole story." "That's nicer than a lot of adults manage out on the street," a delivery truck rumbled past, the kind I used to drive when money was tight. I watched Ellie walk to the car where her mother was waiting. The morning had the kind of thin sunlight that makes you promise yourself to get things done before it turns hot and heavy. My phone buzzed. A message from Sam. "You alive?" I smiled and typed back. "Lux holding." He wrote, "That hospital wing. Good work." I put the phone down and listened to the house breathe, to the slight settling of wood as the weather adjusted, to the old clock that had been ticking through our arguments and reconciliations for 30 years. In the kitchen, the blue folder sat where Anita had left it that first afternoon, as unremarkable as a cookbook and as decisive as a blueprint. I stood, poured coffee, and carried the mug to the porch. Across the street, Mrs. Henderson knelt in her garden, coaxing green from the ground with the patience of a person who knows that growth looks like nothing at all until it doesn't. I lifted my mug in her direction. She waved without standing. A police siren far off in the town's throat rose and fell, and rose again, the way life does when it's taking pictures of you for a file you'll never see. Somewhere in the hospital under my fund's name, a liaison was handing a charger to a man whose battery had died in the heart of a crisis. Somewhere a nurse was saying, "I've got you," and meaning it. And somewhere my son was looking at a leather portfolio, feeling the stiffness in its corners, deciding, today, again, what he would do with the weight of his name.
My grandpa's words really happened. I believe him. If you want more true tales stories like this, hit subscribe.